If you were the leader of the Japanese Empire in 1941, a brilliant strategist, a visionary commander, would you have ordered the attack on Pearl Harbor? Would you dare to awaken a sleeping giant, igniting a war against an enemy with superior economic, military, and technological power? Would you believe that a single lightning strike could cripple the United States, paving the way for Japan to realize its dream of dominance in the Pacific? On the morning of December 7, 1941, as the first light of dawn touched the island of Oahu, Hawaii, the skies suddenly roared with the deafening sound of engines. Hundreds of Japanese aircraft descended like razor-sharp daggers, launching one of the most shocking and unexpected attacks in modern warfare. No declaration of war, no warning, only fire, smoke, and destruction. Within less than 2 hours, American forces at Pearl Harbor were thrown into chaos. The mighty battleships, the pride of the Pacific Fleet, were either sunk or left in ruins. The world stood in shock. But this was not just a battle. It was a turning point that shaped the course of World War II. A bold and daring strike, seemingly a brilliant victory, yet it became the catalyst for Japan's inevitable downfall. So what really happened at Pearl Harbor? How did Japan calculate its moves? And why did a moment of triumph lead to ultimate defeat? Let's step into the most intense hours of that fateful morning. The world's largest naval fortress at the time, of the world's most powerful nation, the pride of the United States. The Pearl Harbor military base had enough strength to crush a European nation in the blink of an eye, with its vast capacity, modern weaponry, and the world's most formidable fleet, masters of the vast Pacific Ocean. That was the United States Navy's fleet, consisting of 170 warships, aircraft carriers, cruisers, and more than 400 aircraft of all types with tremendous combat power. Yet, in less than 3 hours, it was shattered, becoming the greatest humiliation in American history, an event that changed the course of World War II, the Battle of Pearl Harbor. In the 1930s, when capitalist powers were increasingly shifting toward extreme nationalism, militarism, Japan's ambitions had never been more evident. What they desired was not just the prosperity of one nation, but the dream of dominating the entire Asia-Pacific region. From a small country on the eastern coast of China, Japan began to dream of building an empire. With a powerful military, they launched a campaign of invasion across East Asia, starting with Manchuria and China. In December 1937, the Second Sino-Japanese War broke out, and in a short time, the Japanese army captured Nanjing, the capital of the nationalist government of China. Here, they carried out a massacre and mass rapes, killing nearly 300,000 people, creating an unforgettable shame in history. Not stopping there, Japan continued to expand its ambitions, occupying territories in the Russian Far East, Korea, and Southeast Asia, areas under British and American control. Japan's brutal actions made the United States, the leading world power at the time, unable to remain passive. Washington decided to implement a series of economic sanctions against Japan, including freezing assets and imposing trade embargoes on strategic items such as aircraft, metals, and especially oil. However, the Americans were wrong in their calculations because the Japanese did not think the same way. Isoroku Yamamoto, the commander of the Imperial Japanese Navy, was the one who devised the plan to attack Pearl Harbor. Yamamoto's goal was to neutralize the Pacific Fleet, allowing Japan's other forces to easily occupy other territories. To gain leverage in negotiations with the US, Japan implemented a double-edged strategy. On one hand, they continued to participate in diplomatic talks, showing goodwill. On the other hand, they secretly prepared for the attack. This attack included 2 air raids, with 3 main types of aircraft being used. One Mitsubishi A6M Type 11 fighter plane, also known as the Zero. This aircraft had a maximum speed of up to 545 km per hour, was equipped with a 20 mm machine gun and 2 60 kg bombs under its wings. 2 The Aichi D-3A Type 99 dive bomber, also known as the Naval. This aircraft has a maximum speed of 450 km per hour and a maximum range of 1,400 km. It is equipped with a 250 kg bomb underneath its fuselage and two 60 kg bombs under its wings. 3. The Nakajima B-5N Type 97 torpedo bomber, also known as the Kate. This aircraft has a maximum speed of 360 km per hour and is equipped with a 457 mm Mk-91 torpedo or an 800 kg bomb under its fuselage. According to Yamamoto's calculations, the first wave of the attack would target the battleships and aircraft carriers, as well as airbases like Wheeler Field, Barbers Point, and Kaneohe. The second wave would continue to clean up the remaining targets. On November 26, 1941, from the Kure Naval Base, a Japanese task force named Kido Butai, consisting of 6 of the fleet's most powerful aircraft carriers, over 400 aircraft, 2 heavy cruisers, and 6 fuel supply ships, under the command of Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo, set off from northern Japan towards the northwest of Hawaii. Everything was done in secrecy, under orders from Admiral Yamamoto, and the task force was instructed not to reveal its position if encountering American ships before December 6. Fortunately, during the 10-day journey, the Japanese forces did not encounter any ships. At 3:30 a.m. on December 7, the task force arrived at the designated point, 300 kilometers north of Pearl Harbor. A wake-up call was issued, instructing all members of Kido Butai to prepare for battle. The Nakajima A-8N seaplane was launched to scout the weather and gather valuable intelligence. As the sun rose, the waves crashed against the shore, and at 6:00 am, the legendary flag was hoisted on the battleship Akagi. This flag symbolized the spirit of sacrifice in the Bushido tradition and had been used by Admiral Togo during the Battle of Tsushima to defeat the Russian fleet in 1905. Lieutenant Colonel Mishu Fuchida, the commander of the attack, took the flag and gave the order to begin the assault. At 6:20 a.m., the aircraft began launching from the 6 aircraft carriers. The first wave of 183 aircraft was in position. All the planes took off in record time, their roar echoing through the sky. The aircraft formed a V-shape and proceeded towards Oahu at a speed of 231 km per hour. As they neared Oahu, the U.S. Army's SCR-270 radar, stationed at Opana Point, detected the aircraft and issued a warning. However, at this time, the U.S. base was also receiving bombers from the mainland to reinforce the forces, and they mistakenly thought it was a routine drill. At an altitude of 3,500 meters, the Japanese planes flew through a thick layer of clouds, causing some anxiety among the pilots. It wasn't until around 7:40 a.m., when the sky cleared, that Colonel Fuchida joyfully realized that Pearl Harbor was in sight. True to plan, he ordered the entire squadron to fly along the northwest coastline to approach the target. Through binoculars, the soldiers were thrilled to see the 8 battleships lined up in a perfect row: Oklahoma, Maryland, West Virginia, Tennessee, Arizona, Nevada, California, along with many other cruisers and destroyers. However, sadly, there were no aircraft carriers. At 7:48 a.m., Fuchida sent out the secret code TTT and fired a black flare, officially beginning the attack. The Nakajima B-5N torpedo bombers quickly closed in on the enemy warships. The Aichi D-3A dive bombers split into 2 groups. The first group attacked the nearby aircraft carriers to prevent the U.S. Air Force from retaliating, while the second group attacked the battleships. As they couldn't arrange their formation, the Mitsubishi A-6M fighters were also ordered to strike at the airfields. At 7:53, just before the first bomb fell on Pearl Harbor, the code Tora was sent, signifying that the attack had successfully achieved surprise. The sailors on the U.S. warships awoke to the sound of alarms and explosions. Those still groggy rushed to get dressed and ran to their battle stations. Many soldiers were attending church services, as it was the weekend. And they were unprepared for an attack. The ammunition depots were still locked, guns were not in firing position, planes were parked closely together on the tarmac, and the artillery had no operators. The torpedo bombers, equipped with 800 kilograms armor-piercing bombs, attacked the battleships. Oklahoma, before it could even start its engines, was hit by 2 torpedoes and a barrage of cluster bombs, causing water to flood into its compartments. The next round of torpedoes struck the USS Utah, an old U.S. warship, sinking it. The battleship Pennsylvania, though docked in dry dock, was also not spared. It was attacked with 2 bombs from the air. Because the harbor's depth was only about 10 meters, the U.S. Navy made the mistake of not deploying torpedo nets around their warships. Taking advantage of this unpreparedness, the Japanese executed a remarkably smart attack. Japanese planes raced across the sea, launching torpedoes at the enemy ships at a speed of about 30 to 42 knots. In just 5 minutes, 4 battleships had been hit by torpedoes. The Oklahoma sank immediately, and all 400 sailors aboard perished. Although the USS Arizona survived the torpedoes, it was bombed 5 times. At 8:10 a.m., an 800 kilograms bomb pierced the deck and dropped into the forward ammunition hold. The ship exploded, splitting in half, killing all 1,177 crew members aboard. On the beach, the battleships Tennessee and Maryland were each hit by an armor-piercing bomb. California and West Virginia were sunk. Nevada, on the outermost edge, nearly escaped due to the sailor's composure and the fact that its boilers had been preheated. However, as Nevada attempted to maneuver out of the harbor, it was spotted by Japanese planes and was struck by 2 armor-piercing bombs. 4 regular bombs and 1 torpedo, before getting stuck at the harbor entrance. The mighty warships of the Pacific Fleet, once the pride of the U.S. Navy, were now completely surprised and destroyed by the Japanese Air Force. Despite this, the U.S. Navy managed to retaliate. Doris Miller, a third-class sailor on the USS West Virginia, was wounded when his ship was hit by torpedoes. He rushed to the engine room and operated a caliber Browning anti-aircraft gun, shooting at enemy planes until his last bullet. C. Kenneth Taylor and George Dewell, still half asleep, ran to the Curtiss P-40s parked on the tarmac and shot down all 7 Japanese planes. But that was just the beginning. At 8:54 a.m., 171 aircraft in the second wave of the attack ripped through the sky again. This time, cruisers and destroyers took the brunt of the attack. Helena was hit by a torpedo from the first wave of the second attack, catching fire fiercely, while Raleigh was struck by a torpedo that tore a hole in its side. Honolulu narrowly escaped and retaliated with anti-aircraft fire. The destroyers were continuously attacked and bombed, with armor-piercing bombs striking ammunition magazines. The scene was even worse. The second wave of the Japanese attack targeted airbases like Ford Island and the B-field airfields of the U.S. Air Force. Initially, American pilots thought they were participating in a drill. But when the D-3A dive bombers bearing the Japanese Navy's symbol came down, they suddenly realized the truth. All the fighter planes on the airfields were destroyed, neatly lined up, becoming easy targets for the rockets fired by the Zero aircraft. Seaplanes also lined up at Kano H and were set ablaze. Ground crew and pilots tried to shoot at anything they could with rifles, pistols, and submachine guns. The Air Defense Forces began to reorganize and had some strength, but due to disorganized shooting without a systematic approach, they didn't cause much damage. In just a few minutes, the Wheeler, Hickam, and Barber airfields were devastated by the Japanese. In addition to the airstrikes, the Japanese Navy also deployed submarines around Oahu to block any escape routes for the ships that had managed to survive the barrage. However, the naval attack was not very successful. 1 Japanese submarine ran aground and washed up on the beach, and 1 sailor was captured as a prisoner of war. The battle lasted for 90 minutes, with 20 Japanese planes shot down, 4 mini-submarines sunk, and 64 people killed. However, these damages were nothing compared to the massive losses the U.S. had to endure. In less than 2 hours, nearly 20 U.S. warships were damaged, more than 300 planes were destroyed, 2,403 military personnel and civilians were killed, and 1,282 others were injured. The surprise attack by the Japanese on the morning of December 7th awakened a giant monster. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, speaking in anger, declared that the United States would live forever in shame. A slew of newspapers immediately headlined the Pearl Harbor event. The world was shocked to learn that the mighty Pacific Fleet, considered an impregnable fortress, was not as strong as once thought. Army Chief of Staff George Marshall could not imagine that this was a massive earthquake, and even the United States was not immune to the surprise of this attack. The U.S. officially entered World War II. Facing the Axis powers, the Imperial Japanese Navy scored a major victory at Pearl Harbor, but they made a significant mistake by not uprooting the grass. No U.S. aircraft carriers were destroyed, and the repair docks, oil storage, and ammunition depots remained intact. Japan would soon have to pay for its reckless actions. After the Pearl Harbor attack, a U.S. congressional committee conducted an in-depth investigation into the disaster, and one of the conclusions was that the U.S. forces were too focused on training to recognize the possibility of an attack. U.S. military commanders were so concerned about sabotage that they locked the ammunition depots and ceased distributing weapons to defense points. The U.S. Navy also did not maintain patrols by aircraft over the seas due to a lack of equipment. However, as the investigation deepened, many mysterious findings came to light. Many people agreed with the theory that this was a humiliation plan by President Franklin D. Roosevelt. The U.S. government had called it a surprise attack by Japan, but many officials believed that President Roosevelt was well aware of the attack. During World War II, the U.S. had noticed the growing strength of the Axis powers, especially the influence of Japanese fascism in East Asia. This posed a major threat to the U.S. if all its allies were overwhelmed on the European and Asian fronts. The U.S. wanted to join the war, but this was not supported by the public. Therefore, the U.S. deliberately forced Japan into a corner, creating an opportunity to enter the war through Pearl Harbor. According to Robert Stinnett's book Day of Deceit, a researcher at the Independent Research Institute in Orland, California, after studying some secret documents, he proposed another theory. He pointed out that about 11 months before the attack, Admiral Husband Kimmel, commander of the Pacific Fleet, and Vice Admiral James Richardson had warned about the possibility of Japan attacking Pearl Harbor. This warning was based on intelligence reports from the U.S. Navy's spies in Japan, codenamed Operation Magic. By November 7, 1941, a month before the attack, Admiral Stark from the Pentagon had telegraphed the Pacific Fleet Command, confirming that the situation in the region was gradually turning into a crisis. A week later, another telegram clarified that the U.S. hoped Japan would attack first. This message also ordered Admiral Kimmel to cease any intelligence activities related to Operation Magic and instructed the evacuation of ships to avoid significant damage. As a result, 2 aircraft carriers, 6 cruisers, and 14 torpedo boats were evacuated from Pearl Harbor to the Midway and Wake Islands, hundreds of miles away, reinforcing this theory. Further analysis argued that there was no reason why the U.S.'s advanced radar systems couldn't detect the 6 Japanese warships carrying 400 aircraft, stationed 350 kilometers from the target. Specifically, on the night of December 6, 1941, just before Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor, President Roosevelt convened a rare meeting with senior war advisors, including U.S. Navy Admiral Stark, War Secretary Henry Stimson, and intelligence advisor Harry Hopkins. The atmosphere in the room was heavy, as if they were awaiting something to happen to the U.S. Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor. Even after the attack, suspicions continued to rise when Admiral Kimmel revealed to his close friend James Steinman that he was holding the greatest secret in history. What do you think about this theory? Could history still be hiding untold secrets, or are these just baseless speculations? Share your thoughts. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy thought-provoking historical stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss upcoming content.